and give us their
unbelievable today. Has exceeded my expectations.
my favorite part about
We just thought that we were
Well, how you doing?
I'm doing great. What about you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for doing this recording with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Sorry it took me so long, just wrapping up a pretty busy 2024 here. So I'm
I
happy to
saw
jump
that.
on.
It's been a good year, right?
It has been. It has been. They're all good years. What can I say? They're all good years. They're not all easy years, but they're all good years.
Okay, so one thing I was going to ask you, I was talking to Matt Smith, and for those of you who are listening, Matt Smith is our VP of Training and Support, and I was saying, hey, tell me about Kevin, how this year has been, and all that, and we were catching up on some of the notes, and it was kind of interesting because Matt said that you are very consistent in doing calls with your franchise business consultant, which is, who is it again? It's
Greg
Greg
Koopman. Yep.
Greg Koopman. That you are very consistent, about 2 calls every month.
Yep.
And straight up, just between you and me, interesting to hear the consistency of you doing these calls and reaching out. But why do you stay consistent? And I don't know, what's the value of it?
Yeah, I mean, it can really range. I mean, sometimes it's just pure therapy. Sometimes I just need somebody to blow off some steam with, right? So,
Yeah.
having a tough week, having a tough challenge in the staffing or with a client. I mean, obviously, you're working with people. Things can get a little hairy sometimes, but Greg's a great sounding board at the very least. Even if I don't have anything specific that I want to work on him with, but a lot of times we'll have a specific subject we want to cover. Like for instance, recently we looking at staffing ratios, office staff to revenue ratios, and kind of digging into what industry standards are and where mine sits compared to that, and really having meaningful conversations around that. I mean, Greg is and I found this with the other franchise coaches I've had. I've had a few. But I find that everybody's got their unique strengths and everybody's had a really different and extensive background in home care. So I always get something from it, right? It's kind of like the same as going to conference and talking to all your fellow owners and operations directors and AFI personnel. I mean, I'm a guy that's just like, I'm always talking, I'm always collaborating, I'm always trying to get different ideas. I mean, I love that. So that's a big part of what I lean into, talking to staying on the phone, talking to other owners across the country, being involved in my, my performance, my peer performance group is a huge thing for me. I really love talking to those guys, a few times a year. And yeah, I mean, you can't be out here on an island doing it on your own,
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget that, right? They get into a business and it's busy, and you start to just kind of isolate yourself, either from your fellow franchise partners or from Amada. And I see this with a lot of other brands too, where they get themselves isolated. And we've seen many times on data wise. So Matt's compiled data where the franchise partners that are in our top 20, it correlates where they have a lot of interaction with their FBCs or with all the team here, and the ones that usually have lower productivity are the ones that it correlates that have very little interaction. And actually, and I was going through that and I was thinking, well, I don't know that paints a picture that corporate or that we have like all the answers. I don't think that's what it paints. I think it's like you said, it's the therapy of it. It's the consistent talking through ideas and sounding boarding and just even, I don't know if it's accountability, but I think everybody kind of needs that.
It's not just having answers. It's really about knowing that people have walked the same journey before or are currently walking the same journey or just about to. So that's really what I get out of it, is knowing that, because you can feel very isolated out here.
Yeah.
Even though I've got a great staff and I've got great referral sources and talk to my client families all the time, talk to my caregivers all the time, it can be challenging, and it's because you're kind of alone in your thoughts. And so I don't know how anybody can do it with that kind of an approach. But yeah, it's not, you don't always need answers. Answers aren't always what you're looking for.
Yeah, I actually, that should be that's what my wife tells me all the time.
I don't need to give you an answer, Marcos.
I just need you to listen to me.
Smart woman.
Hey, so the other thing I was going to ask you, as I was preparing for this, 20 years of med device sales. And wait, and it was right out of college, right?
A few years just kind of bouncing around out of college. I actually fancied myself a physician at one point. I was pre-med in college, and I'm still pre-med, 52 years old and still pre-med. But so yeah, I was funny enough, a biology major, and that was the path I was going on. But then soon after graduating college, I sort of started down the family path instead. Medical school didn't seem, from a lifestyle point of view, really where I wanted to go, and I at that point didn't really know what I wanted to do. But the one thing that's resonated with me then in my early 20s and continues to resonate with me is like wanting to make sure that I was making a living while I was making a difference, right? And that's kind of what led me down that idea of being part of the medical community. So once I had a couple years of different types of office work, financial sector office work, stuff that I didn't find interesting at all or meaningful at all. A couple of my friends from college had started in pharmaceutical sales, and they're all driving Explorers around. They're making really good money. I'm like, okay, well, that's a pretty interesting way to make a living too, right? And
Yeah.
I got into that, somewhat naively, thinking that I was going to be part of the healthcare community, and in some ways I was. I mean, I was still. It's quite a kick to influence the mindset of the most educated people on the planet. So when you're in talking
Hmm.
to physicians, even though you're some snot nosed 25-year-old kid, and you can actually make an impact on their mindset. I mean, that's a pretty powerful thing. So I really got a lot out of that, and I really leaned into the fact that I truly believed I was at the end of the day selling medications or devices or products or supplies over the course of my career that people used for their health, right? And that stayed true. I mean, over 20 years, I stayed in that same arena because that did resonate with me and it did matter to me. And the final job I had before you personally reached out to me on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
I was selling an insulin pump for about 6 years for one of the leading manufacturers, and had a really successful run with that at some of the best endocrinology practices in the Northeast, up in Boston. I mean, there's really very well known places like the Joslin Diabetes Center, and that was the job where I was actually not only talking to the clinicians, but I was actually meeting with families in their living rooms at their kitchen tables, talking to them about what that insulin pump could do, what it could mean for them, and how it could change, their health and their
And
outlook
you
on their
you
health.
enjoyed that you
I
enjoyed
loved
that
that part
part
of
of
it.
being with the family?
Yeah, that's the part that was finally that connective tissue that I've been looking for all those years,
That's
right? And I
interesting.
and I and I kind of getting to see those end users and getting to then see them again at their doctor's appointments. Like I'd run into them in the hallways, or I'd see them at a juvenile diabetes research fund walk, JDRF walk. So I kept in touch with a lot of these families, and a lot of times I was talking to parents of young or teenage children that were using these devices. That part really, really motivated me, and that honestly was the one thing that when I started to look at this opportunity, I said, yeah, that seems very familiar to it seems very familiar to me, and that's the stuff that really gets me going in the morning is the people that are actually benefiting. And I'd never had that before. I'd never met a patient that was on a medication that I sold before. I'd never met a patient that
Really?
used a piece of equipment that I sold before or a supply that I sold before. I just talked to the clinicians.
So then when we reach out to you on LinkedIn, and I think that's 2020, it was
Yep.
pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah,
Because I think
it
you've
was
been in
just at
business
the
now
end of
since
that first year.
21.
Yeah, it was just at the end of the first year of COVID there.
Oh, it was during COVID.
Yeah, so, COVID
Oh yeah,
happened and
21, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah. So I signed my agreement that December of 2020. So it was the
Okay,
end of
so
that
what
year.
what after 20 years of doing this, and I've talked to people before who are like, "Dude, I've done 20 years of this. I have issues with this and this and this in my industry, but I'm not going to leave 20 years to start a business. Like I'm going to retire here. I've made a great name for myself. I can do it in my sleep. I've got a lot of time. I get paid well. Why? What was it that made you think, "Yeah, I'm going to completely switch and start my own thing?"
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, and probably the number one thing was, I'm looking at the good side of 50 at that point in time, and thinking I'd bet had 6 good years at this last company. Obviously, COVID gave all of us a lot of time to think about things, right? That was
Yeah,
the time.
true. It
That was
did.
kind of now known as the time where people reevaluated their careers and their lives, and
Yeah, very
is
true.
that it really did happen with me. And I was kind of looking at, okay, when this all clears up and I get back to pounding the pavement with this same product with these same doctors, and I just had a conversation with the vice president of sales saying, I've squeezed every ounce of juice out of this orange that we call a quota, year after year after year, and I don't know how I'm going to get any more market share next year. And the answer was, well, that's the job. It's
You
and I was
gotta you
really
gotta go get more.
looking at the fact that I'm going to work literally twice as hard and I'm going to make less money than I did in year one. And it just started to feel like a really losing
Yeah.
proposition. And it wasn't the first time that happened in my career. That happened multiple times in my career. And I think it happens to a lot of people in that line of work where you get as much out of it as you can. You can't outrun the quota eventually, right? And your success actually leads to your downfall sometimes. And it was just very, very a strange coincidence. I was having feelings like that. I was thinking, wow, am I gonna have to start all over again at 49 years old and go through training again and meet a new manager again and try this whole thing all over again for the fourth or fifth time? And interestingly enough, a good friend of mine that I worked with at the time called me up and said, hey, Bill just sold his medical device distributor company for millions of dollars. And I'm like, no way, Bill's not even a good business owner, right? So I just kind of sat there and scratched my head, and I said to her, I'm like, why did he do that and we didn't do that? I mean, we could have easily opened that business and probably done it a lot better because we're, I don't know, just more in tune with things, right? And she
Sure,
goes,
yeah,
well, he
yeah.
he did it because he did it. and we didn't. And I was like, that's a really
Good
great
point.
point. And honestly, that
Yeah.
was the same week he reached out to me. And that was like, okay, maybe doing my own thing and, you know, growing my product line 10 times over will actually benefit me if I was doing my own thing versus, oh, now it just means I have to work 10 times harder to make the same quota, make the same revenue, you know?
Man, that's amazing. So you then we start talking, and this is 2020. COVID is raging. I think you go into business early 21, right? You get your license, you get everything ready early 21.
Came back from Amada U. Actually, we got COVID the day we were supposed to leave for Amada U. My wife and I, the first time
No
in
way,
April,
really?
we both got COVID. Well, actually, we were supposed to fly out Sunday morning, and Saturday night, she's like, I just took a test and I have COVID, and I was like, come on now. And so we had to delay everything for a month, and I'd already left my job, and that wasn't the most opportune time. But we just did a little more prep work for another month, and went in May. Spent our week out there in May, learning all the ins and outs of the business, and opened shortly after, about 2 weeks after, in June 1st of 21. Yeah, is when we opened.
You've hit some pretty amazing revenue milestones in a relatively short period of time. You now own, I think, 3 markets. How hard was it so far?
So far, it's still hard. I mean, it's hard work. I mean, that's what I tell people. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. Your group, they send people over to talk to me, and
Yeah.
I don't blow a lot of smoke and say, oh yeah, this is like, oh, you just want to make money, just open a home care company. I mean, just
Yeah.
that's not how it works. I mean, you have to really care about what you're doing, and you have to work your tail off. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And people that come into this thinking they're gonna, have their other job and start this, I don't even know how anybody could even think about having that mentality, right? But
Just keeping their job and doing this on the side,
exactly,
and this
exactly.
would be a fun little
Oh
little
yeah,
side gig.
just a hobby, right?
Just so, yeah, this
Just
would
a
be a nice hobby.
casual
Not the
hobby.
case, right?
It's not the case, and then the reason, I think about why this is so hard, it's because we're dealing with people in crisis every single
Yeah.
time they call us.
Yeah.
Every single time our phone rings, somebody's in a crisis, and it's sometimes they're small crises, and sometimes they're massive crises, I should say. So
Yeah.
larger, they could be all over the map. It could be somebody, hey, mom just needs someone to take her to her hair appointments a couple times a week, or dad is on the last stages of hospice and we need somebody there around the
Mhm.
clock. And those are both crises, and it's that's what I kind of continue to remind myself day after day after day when people go off the handle, or get really upset with me on the phone or with my staff. I'm like, these people are dealing with something that's beyond what
They're
they're
not in
looking
their
at.
right they're not in their right frame of mind a lot of
Yeah.
times, because
Yeah, it's real work, and it means something, and it's like it's not easy because of the fact that it's a people business, right? They haven't learned how to automate this, thankfully, or we wouldn't have this this
true.
this business,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it's people. It's people taking care. It's people sending people to take care of people for the people they love. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
people involved, right? So
Yeah.
and it can be pretty hairy, but on the flip side of that, I mean, it's like everything, with great risk comes great reward. I mean, the people that you help out of these crises, the people that tell you time in and time out, how much of an impact you and your team made on their life. It really, I mean, it's worth everything. And I don't think I could ever do anything after doing this where I didn't know I was making a major impact in somebody's life.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I I remember I won't cite names, but I remember there was one entrepreneur that started Amada Senior Care, and after about, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 or 6 months, he came to us and he said, "This is not me." And it was interesting because he said, I really struggle with a couple of things. I struggle with the people side, and I struggle with the fact that I need to go into a hospital and speak to, a nurse or a case management team that may kick me out. And I go to my car, and I got to be honest, I kind of cry a little bit. And he was like, and it was funny because for that entrepreneur, they ended up partnering with somebody that was more sales oriented. And then that partnership really worked because the first entrepreneur, who was more an operational person, had a big ego, which I think was cool that he had recognized that my ego is too I have too much of an ego to be treated that way by a case manager by saying, I don't have time for you, leave. But then when he partnered with somebody who was a salesperson who, eats glass for breakfast, then their business just went bananas. That part of it, so people in crisis, that can be something that either depletes your bucket. At the end of the day, you're like, I can't keep taking people's problems. The hospital's saying, I don't have time for you, get out of here. So these things, do these things affect you negatively, or are you just a different type of person that you're able to just, or you're fed by these things, like they're fulfilling for you? Like how do you do all of that together?
Yeah, I mean, to take those in kind of two separate buckets, I mean, the case manager or the potential referral source telling you need to get out of there, they don't have time for me. I mean, that's just a challenge, right? You can't get to yes without an objection. That's kind of the way I've always looked at it. And the best sales training I've ever had is learning how to handle objections, right? Learning and listening to what the issues are, right? That's every good salesperson will tell you the number one skill is listening. My wife will
Yeah.
tell you I completely lack that skill, but professionally, it's paid out pretty well. But
Uh,
that's really the truth, and so that's just I mean, the closed door is just an opportunity. I've just done that for 25 years now. It's not that doesn't get to me at all. I just have to think of a different approach. But in terms of taking on somebody's problems, I mean, one of the ways I mitigate that, and coming back to bite me, is I try very very hard to be as transparent as I can up front, and to set expectations as realistically as I can up front. And there's a lot of people that I've dealt with, and probably in the earlier years, I would have said, you know what, I'm going to continue to do backflips, standing on my head underwater, holding my nose, right, and try to make this person happy, even though their expectations are way, way, way over in left
yeah.
field, right? And I mean, you know what I'm talking about. It sounds like you're thinking of somebody right now. And
Yeah.
we do have our fair share of clients or family members like that, or even employees. But if you're transparent and you set expectations the right way, you can mitigate how often that comes. And then you can be very honest with that person and just say, hey, look, I told you this is what this is. And I told you that this is what this isn't. And we're at an impasse here in me making you happy. I'm not afraid to fire a client if I have to.
Yeah.
If I just sit there and bang my head against the wall, myself and my staff and my caregivers trying to make them happy, and we're just not going to get there because they won't see the limitations of what we can do. We're not medical professionals. We're not care managers. I'm not going to be able to go in and change all the aspects of a client's life. I can go in and provide what I call the two sides of the coin for care: personal care and homemaking care, right? Like
Yeah.
there's really only so much we can do, but we sometimes we get tasked with being miracle workers, and we get tasked with being therapists, and we get tasked with being lawyers, financial planners, all these different hats that people want us to wear. And of course we can wear those hats to some degree, but we can't be the answer, the end all and be all answer for everybody. It's about setting expectations, I think. But if you
There's
don't if you
a
don't like people, then this isn't your business.
This
Get
isn't
a
your
laundromat.
business. I don't know if you remember, there was a skit on SNL with Happy Gilmore. What's his name?
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler, where he's a travel agent, and he's talking about, hey, we are a travel company and we take you to Italy, specialize it. We can show you the Colosseum. We can show you these things. And he goes, but we cannot make you into a happy person. And the whole skit is like, if you are miserable, if you are fighting with your spouse, when you come on vacation, that is not going to change.
Right,
And
right.
it's this whole skit of like what we can do, but we cannot do this. It's brilliant, right? And it reminds me of that. It's like, and that's why sometimes you do have to be willing to fire that client, right? And
Yeah.
it's okay. They might have find a happiness elsewhere. That's okay.
I mean, I'm not sure I buy into that, because if we haven't made them happy, I don't know who will. Because I tell everybody all the time, like, I can't say we're going to be better than the next guy. I'm not going to be that person that says I have the best caregivers. You stand up at a networking group and
Yeah,
9 out of 10
I have the
guys say,
best
I have the
caregivers.
best
Yeah,
caregivers. I'm
yeah.
like, we have the same caregivers. My caregiver worked for you last week. And like, it just makes no sense. And, but I will tell people, and I tell people this all the time, I can't say we're going to be perfect, because we're not. We're
Hmm.
very, very good at smoothing out the bumps in this bumpy ride that you're on. We're going to work harder. We're going to care more about making sure that this ride is as smooth as possible. And that's all I can really offer at the end of the day. I cannot control other people. I can't control other people's cars if they break down, or their kids if they get sick, or if there's a
Yeah.
half an inch of snow on the ground and they don't want to drive. But I can communicate, and I can be transparent, and I can prepare people with expectations. And I think that's a huge key to success in this business.
How has your time changed from the 20 years in healthcare and now owning a business? And you're everything when that business starts. And
Mhm.
for a while, your sales, your ops, your payroll, your HR, you're doing everything. Some people come to us because they say, I want to have autonomy of my time. I don't want a boss to tell me when I can and can't. And so, what has that transition been like for you, and the ability for you to manage your own time?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had my entire career, I was sort of on my own, right? Working out of my car, working out of my home. I never ever had an office to go to. So the whole idea of managing my own time and being self-sufficient with my motivation, it was always there. I mean, it has to be there to have an outside sales type of career, right? To have longevity and continued and repeated success in that kind of career. Anybody can go in and fake it and hit a lucky streak, but go in and be the top of your sales force year after year for 3 or 4 different companies in a row. You have to be able to manage your own time. You have to be able to
Yeah.
motivate yourself, right? And so the difference coming here is realizing that truly what I put into it, I get out. So to me, there really is no limit on the time, and that certainly was true in the beginning. I mean, literally 24/7 when it's the beginning, when it's just me and my daughter, kind of opening the doors and saying, "Hey, we have a home care company." I'm like, "No, we don't. We just have business cards.
Yeah.
We just have business
Yeah.
cards and one caregiver." It's like,
Yeah.
fake it till you make it 24/7, and
Yeah.
many late night shift covers myself and middle of the night shift covers myself. Matter of fact, New Year's Eve 2020 turning into 2021 or 2022, I'm sorry. I got called at like 11 o'clock at night and caregiver had to leave, sick kid. I had to go do an overnight and I'd already,
No way.
but thankfully, hadn't been celebrating, knowing that that might happen. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it's real. You have to be willing to do that, and you have to be willing to put in all that work, and then eventually you build out your team, right? And I've got a really solid team now. I've got 4 full-time people in the office, and got a great great support. So I don't have to focus on the day to day, what's going on every single day with every single shift, with every single client, every single caregiver. I focus more on growing the business. I mean, I look at my role being director of business development now, right? That's really kind of my role is trying to find
Mhm.
where's the new revenue streams, where's the new referral sources, where's our business going to come from. So, then you have somebody call out sick or get COVID in the office, and I'm just back down in access care,
Yeah. Yeah.
elbows deep in red shifts on the schedule, and that's
Right.
fine too. So yeah, I mean, I think for everybody, it's a matter of just knowing this is not an easy path to just saying I'm going to go out there. I mean, for instance, the gentleman that I just purchased an existing location, which you're aware of, and the
Yeah.
gentleman that had it before us, really just said that, threw his hands up in the air and said, "Mea culpa. I thought I was just going to buy this and it's just going to make money." And I'm like, it couldn't be the furthest from the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to not only know how to run the companies to be able to actually have the reputation that allows people to trust you, but that
Mhm.
comes from running the company the right way. And then you have to go get their trust and earn their trust and keep their
Right.
trust. And that doesn't stop. You can't take your foot off the gas. So my goal in 2025 is to get a hobby. I keep telling my wife that. And so I need a hobby, which is not just working. But at the same time, you mentioned earlier, pretty quick timeline to success, and that can be a little bit addictive too. So just kind of continuing with the success, but at the same time trying to scale out my team so that I'm not the only person doing the heavy lifting. And that's been a challenging path, but we're there. We're there a good portion of the way there now, where I can feel like, okay, I could actually go on a vacation and shut my phone off for a week and everything would be totally fine. That's a pretty good feeling.
That's a pretty good feeling. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So 2025. Sometimes the last question I want to ask you is I just had a conversation with a gentleman today that said, "Man, I looked at my find a caregiver. I need a caregiver, and there was like 5 pages of Google. There's a million companies in my market, and I that's probably not what it's like in Orange County." He was talking about, so just talk a little bit about the competition that you found when you went into your market, and how much did that impact your ability to build your business?
Are you talking about from a hiring point of view or a billing or client point of view or both?
I guess both. Yeah, because
Okay.
somebody may look in their market and go, dude, the last thing this town needs is another home care company. There's like 50 of them. Like, why? And they'll say, hey, man, my market is saturated. It might not be in yours, but mine is saturated. So, what did you find when you started?
There's no such thing as a saturated market, number one, because it really, and this is what I say when I get up at networking groups, and I found this to be very true. I'll be the 10th guy and get up there and say, well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I have the best caregivers. I'm going to tell you that what's very important is for you to get to know the people behind the scenes, because the people behind the scenes is what makes the difference. Like, everybody's got a software that runs their schedule. Everybody's got the same caregivers. Everybody's paying them within a dollar of each other. Everybody's doing the exact same thing. I do like to think we're doing a few things differently, right, when it comes to motivating our caregivers, but it all boils down to the people. Because Greg, my coach, is a great. He's got this great phrase that stole from some best-selling business book, which is people, process, technology. Right, those are the three
Mhm.
keys to running a business. And AFI gives you the technology. certainly. Like you give us an amazing software platform to run the business on, which I honestly I think it's as close to perfect as it would ever need to be. I can't really, I wouldn't be able to build it better. Process, you definitely lay out the process, right? That's what buying a franchise is all about. But you can't make us and you can't make my employees the people that we are, right? And that we need to be. So it really boils down to the people behind the screens, the people behind the scenes, right? And that's what I've been successful at being able to do is find the right people that are answering the phone, that are begging these caregivers to go out to work, that are calming down the client who, we have a no call, no show. That's the most important pillar of those three things is people. Process and technology, that's the easy part. And so,
Got
that's how we stand apart. I tell people that all the time and I mean it and I live it and it's in my heart and soul that we are better at communicating. We care more. We're going to try harder to make you happy. And that's at the end of the day, I don't care how saturated your market is. If you do that, then you're going to stand above everybody else. So from the client point of view, that's my take there. I mean, from the caregiver point of view, it's pretty similar. We're paying these guys all within a dollar. We're not offering funded healthcare. We're not offering big retirement funds and stock options. We're offering hourly wages for hard work, and for hard, meaningful work. And so you have to respect that. And I love, our beloved Marianne. She always says, these caregivers,
Yeah,
some of them lead very fragile lives, and
that's
you
right.
have to understand that, and you have to be able to relate, and you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes and offer support. And whenever somebody calls with a family emergency, I kind of approach it by saying, well, okay, what's the emergency and how can I help? Right, that way.
Instead of how dare you call in, I've got a client that you promised to be there and not even listen
Yep.
to what that emergency is, right?
And then if they say, "What's the emergency?" I say, "What's the emergency and how can I help?" "Oh, my car just exploded. I'm on the side of the highway and it's snowing." And okay, well, that's a pretty big emergency. Well, if I can't get someone there, do you have someone that can be? Come up with a
Yeah.
solution. If the emergency is like, "Well, my parents need a ride home from the airport," I'm like, "That is not an emergency, and that's poor planning." So
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I'll help you by coaching you how that's not an emergency and that we can't have that
Right.
happen again. Granted, I
Right.
know you're not going to your shift. I get that. And I'm not going to coach you in the moment, but we're going to have a conversation afterwards about, hey, Joanne, what happened on Saturday? We need to have a conversation about that. That really doesn't constitute an emergency when you're looking at it from the responsibility that you have and the commitment that you made to these clients, right? Let's talk through that a little bit and having a coaching conversation. But at the end of the day, what I hear from our caregivers time in and time out is what sets us apart is our communication. So it's just staying it's being respectful enough to take the time to communicate with people and just saying
I
like,
love
hey,
that.
this little thing changed in the care plan. Hey, Mrs. Jones is not in a great mood today. When you get there to take care of her mom, just be on your guard. Hey, things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
little things. And our
Overly
team is
communicate.
super good at that. No such thing as over communicating. that's
Yeah.
that's my that's my theme.
I love it. I love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Kevin, appreciate you doing this for us, man. Thank you for taking an hour of your time to share your experience. There's a lot of people who are listening to this who are your doppelgangers. Like they are just like you. 20 years. That's usually what we find, guys and girls in their 20s and 30s. Very few of them are ready to step out, right? But they've been in their careers for 20 years. So I know how impactful this can be for people listening. And I appreciate the honesty, right? Of like, we always try to do that. We always try to tell people that, hey, this is going to be hard. And a lot of times what I hear is, well, what I'm doing right now is hard, And so I really appreciate that. So thank you. Thanks for
No,
being
it's
with
been my
us.
pleasure. I really appreciate it. And it's been my pleasure. And yeah, anything I can do to help, I'm always here.
All right. All right, everybody. If you want to learn more about Amada Senior Care, you know what to do. Just go to your email and you'll most likely have 20 emails from us following up with you. Just click the phone number there. You're probably working with somebody on our team and keep going through the process. If you really don't know where to go, just go to amadaseniorcare.com and I'm sure you'll find a tab there to learn more about Amada. Hey, Kevin, you have a Merry Christmas. Are you ready? Are you ready to go?
I'm never ready till it's go time, but I'm planning. I'm in the planning stages.
For the planning stages, I was
I'm
shopping
like,
for
yeah, I
my
do realize
wife.
it's only a week away. I just kind of like turned and looked at the calendar when you said that, but yeah, it's a week away. We'll get there.
Yeah, my wife tells me I want something impressive, inexpensive that I can return that's not going to die, and you better not spend any money on it. But I want to love it, and
Wow,
so it's yeah,
tall order.
that's all. That's like it's me wrapped in a bow. It's me,
I mean,
I don't cost anything.
Santa bought me a new Chevy Silverado the other day, so that was my present to myself.
Oh,
So
was it really?
yeah, it was
Dude,
picking it up
I
tomorrow.
had a Chevy Silverado. I shouldn't have sold it, man. I should have kept it. I love that truck.
I got rid of my truck 2 years ago because I needed a more of a bang around car for
Yeah.
the job. and I've regretted it ever since.
Yeah.
So today I'm driving a Kia Sportage hybrid, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Just to get
white.
around.
It's white, so I can wrap it with the Amada colors, right? Which I'm gonna do
Uh-huh.
now.
Yeah.
Now that it's
Yeah.
not gonna be my everyday car, but I've regretted getting rid of my truck ever since. I do, a bit of home improvement stuff and landscaping in the summer and things like that. And I gotta
You always
my
need it.
home's my palace, and I need that truck so many times. It's just that's the first big thing I did for myself with my success at Amada is that
Dude,
I go,
congrats,
and my wife
man.
was like, "Do it, man. You work your tail off. Go for it."
Yeah. That's a good woman.
So
That's a good you
she
gotta
is
you
a good
gotta go.
woman.
Let's put her in a lab and study her.
Yes. Well, I did tell her she couldn't use the credit card anymore after that. I mean, I said, but I forgot to tell you, you got to start. You got to cut off all the credit cards.
That's awesome. All
Oh
right,
yeah.
man. We'll let you go. Kevin, thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here with us. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'll talk to you soon.